Good morning, I am Dr. Yasmin Magdi, and today we are going to continue with Auditing 1, Lecture 2. Previous lecture we discussed the definition of auditing and types of audit and what is the main objective of auditing. And we said that the main objective of audit is to issue a report or to give an opinion. The auditor give an opinion whether the financial statement are fairly representing financial position and financial results. Today we are going to contain chapter 1, an overview of auditing. In this lecture we are going to discuss the difference between auditing and accounting, and also we are going to discuss management assertions and transaction related to audit. And finally we are going to discuss in this lecture generally accepted auditing standards. So let's start our lecture. First part of our lecture discussing management assertion and transaction related audit objective. What is the meaning of management assertion? Management assertion is representations by management about classes of transaction and the related accounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Okay, so management assertion is the representation of management, or let's say it's what management says about the financial statements, about classes of transaction, about accounts and disclosure. Okay, what management say. يبقى المانجمنت اسيرشن هي مزاعم الاداره، هي الكلام اللي بتقوله الاداره عن حساباتها وعن افصاحها. تمام. management assertion directly related to the financial reporting framework used by the company, usually generally accepted accounting principles or IFRS, as they are part of the criteria that management uses to record and disclose accounting information in the financial statements. So management assertion related in some way to the criteria. Which criteria? Do you remember in the first lecture when we discussed that auditing is focusing on the comparison between the information and the criteria, and we said that, for example, for the criteria is GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, or IFRS. Okay, management assertion is related to these criteria because management record, okay, management disclose accounting information based or related to this criteria. يبقى المانجمنت assertion هي مرتبطه بشكل ما بالفريم ورك اللي الاداره بتسجل بيه او ان احنا بنسجل بيه التقارير الماليه الفاينانشال ريبورتنج. لو تفتكروا الكرايتيريا اللي احنا قلنا المحاضره اللي فاتت او فيرست ليكتشر وي سيد ذا كرايتيريا الجاب والاي اف ار اس. الجاب والاي اف ار اس دي الكرايتيريا اللي بتستخدمها الاداره عشان ريكورد وديسكلوز تسجل وتفصح عنها الاماونت او financial information في الفاينانشال ستيتمنتس. اوكي. back to the definition of auditing. لو رجعنا definition of auditing in lecture 1 نلاقي ان definition of auditing states that the audit is a comparison or auditing comparison between the financial statement, the financial information, the financial statements to the established criteria. Financial statements or account information, the financial statements is recorded and disclosed using this criteria. Okay, يبقى auditors must therefore understand the assertion to do quality or high quality auditing. يبقى مفروض هنا what is the relation between management assertion and auditing. المانجمنت assertion I'm going to speak in Arabic first and translate into English. المانجمنت assertion هي مزاعم الإدارة، هي الإدارة بتستخدم كرايتيريا معينة عشان تسجل وتفصح عن الفاينانشال انفورميشن. الاوديتنج الهدف بتاعها الأساسي إنها تقارن ما بين الفاينانشال انفورميشن الفاينانشال ستيتمنتس والكرايتيريا. يبقى إذا عندي هنا عشان نعمل ادوبشن للجود الهاي كواليتي auditing يبقى مفروض ان انا ابص على الاسيرشنز بتاعت الاداره. اوكي. so the assertion or management assertion is to prepare or the representation of the management about classes of transactions related accounting and disclosure. To do these classes of transactions, to record and disclosure this information, the management should use generally accepted auditing standards or IFRS, should use a criteria. Back to the definition or back to the objective of the auditing. Objective of the auditing is to make a comparison between the information, the financial information that prepared based on the criteria, established criteria and the established criteria. Okay, so auditor, the relation between assertions and auditing. To adopt high quality auditing, we have to know or have to understand as an auditors the management assertion. Okay, so what are these management assertion? We have the management assertion classified into 5 broad categories: existence or occurrence, completeness, valuation or allocation, rights and obligation, presentation and disclosure. يبقى انا عندي المانجمنت assertion عندي موجوده في 5 categories: existent or occurrence الحدوث او الوجود، completeness الاكتمال، valuation and allocation التقييم، اوكي، rights and obligation الحقوق والالتزامات، presentation and disclosure التمثيل والافصاح او العرض والافصاح. تعالوا نشوف let's see what is the definition of every assertion from these 5 assertions or from these 5 categories. First assertion, assertions about existent or occurrence. Existent assertion of existing deal with whether assets, obligations, and equities included in the balance sheet actually exists on the balance sheet date. So existing means that assets, liabilities, and entities are actually exist. الاصول الاسيتس واللايبيلتيز والانتيتيز اللي انت بتقول انها موجوده that exist in the financial statements is really exist. Okay, for example, management asserts that merchandise inventory including the balance sheet exists and it's available for sale at balance sheet date. For example, is the existence of merchandise inventory. This is meaning the existence. Merchandise inventory is assets. So the auditor must be sure that the assets that the management said it exists is really exist. So what is the meaning of occurrence? Occurrence assertions about occurrence concern with the recorded transactions, including the financial statements, actually occurred during the accounting period. The occurrence to be sure that the recorded transactions is occurred within the year, within the financial year or the financial period. For example, management asserted that recorded sales transaction represented exchange or goods or service that actually took place. Okay, so existing assets, liabilities, entities really exists. Occurrence, any transactions that happened related to the financial period or to the accounting period happened within or during the account period. يبقى المزام او الاسيرشن about existing والاكيورنس معناها ان الاسيتس واللايبيليتيز والانتيتيز اللي احنا بنتكلم عنها فعلا موجوده، اللي موجوده الاسيتس واللايبيليتيز والانتيتيز exist in the balance sheet is really exist in the balance sheet is the date of the balance sheet، موجوده فعليا عندي. يعني لما الاداره تقول لك انا عندي انفنتوري جاهز للبيع فانا فعلا عندي انفنتوري جاهز للبيع. اما الاكيورنس فمعناها I want to be sure that the transactions happened or the transaction recorded is related to the account period, is related to the account period happening in the account during the account period. يبقى اللي انا العمليه اللي انا مسجلاها recorded فعلا حصلت في السنه بتاعتها، في السنه اللي المفروض تتسجل فيها او في السنه اللي احنا فيها دلوقتي. اوكي. What is the meaning of the second category? Completeness. Assertion about completeness. Completeness assertion deals with the matters opposite from those of the existing or occurrence assertions. يبقى completeness عندي هي عكس a completeness. Assertion of completeness أو assertion about completeness is the opposite to existence or occurrence. Okay? يبقى completeness assertion is opposite to existence or occurrence. Completeness assertion is concerned with the possibility of omitting items from the financial statements that should have been included. Okay, whereas the existing or occurrence assertion is concerned with inclusion of amounts that should have not been included. Okay, يبقى completeness عندي هنا caring about the deleted items. Completeness caring about the deleted items, while existing or occurrence caring about the amount of not existing items, of not included items or items that should not included. يبقى الcompleteness هنا is the opposite of existence. Completeness بتهتم عندي بالحاجات اللي انا شلتها omitting deleted from the financial statements, items deleted from the financial statements. اوكي. هو الاكزيستنت عندي بتقول ايه القيم اللي مفروض ما تكونش موجوده وانت حطيتها. اوكي طيب. Thus the violation of the existing assertion lead to the account overstates, whereas violation of completeness related to the account understates. يعني لو احنا عايزين while we need to violate existing assertion, I'm going to record assets that I don't belong to me, or record transactions that doesn't happen during the accounting period. But when I want to violate the assertion of completeness, I have to delete some assets or have to not record it some transaction related to the period. يبقى الاكزيستنت والاكيورنس عكس بعض. عايز تكسر الاسيرشن بتاعت الكومبليتنس ما تسجلش عمليات المفروض تتسجل، لكن عايز تكسر الاكزيستنس بتاعت الاسيرشن بتاعت الاكيورنس والاكزيستنس سجل عمليات وحط اسيتس ما كانتش عندك اصلا. اوكي يبقى اذا عندي هنا الاكزيستنس بتعمل عشان to violate existing meaning I'm making overstatements of some items in the financial statements, while completeness هعمل violation للcompleteness meaning I'm making underestimates، هقلل I'm going to decrease some items or amounts in the financial statements. Okay. For example, the recording of a sale that doesn't take place would be a violation to occurrence assertion, whereas the failure to record a sale that did occur would be a violation of completeness. If I have a sale that I didn't record, okay, during the period, so it's a violation of completeness. I didn't do this sale transaction, but I recorded this, in its violation for occurrence. Okay. طيب لو انا عملت عمليه بيع على سبيل المثال وما سجلتهاش يبقى انا كده عملت فايوليشن للايه؟ للكومبليتنس. لكن لو انا عملت عمليه بيع ما عملتش عمليه بيع، ما فيش عمليه بيع حصلت وسجلتها رغم انها ما حصلتش، فيبقى هنا انا بعمل فايوليشن للايه؟ للاكيورنس. اوكي let's move to the third category, violation or allocation. Violation and allocation, this assertion deal whether assets, liability, equity, revenue and the expenses accounts have been included in the financial statements at appropriate amount. Here, this assertion caring about the appropriate amount. Okay, I am sure that this assets, liability, expenses, revenues exist and really occur. Okay, I didn't omit any of this, but did I recorded these assets, liabilities, equity in the correct amount or not? When I'm recorded in the correct amount, this means that the assertion of violation or allocation is correct. But when I'm recorded these assets, liabilities, equities not in the correct amount, this meaning it's a violation for the valuation and or allocation assertion. Okay. يبقى الالوكيشن assertion or evaluation or allocation assertion بتهتم فعلا ان انت سجلت الاسيتس liabilities revenues expenses entities في ال appropriate amount، في القيمه الفعليه بتاعتها. لكن لو انت عندك الاكزيستنس والاكيورنس موجوده والكومبليتنس سليمه لكن سجلت بطريقه مش صحيحه او سجلت not appropriate amount, this meaning you violate valuation or allocation. For example, management asserted that property is recorded at historical cost and that such cost is systematically allocated to appropriate accounting periods through depreciation. Similarly, management asserts that trade account receivable included in the balance sheet are stated at net realizable value or net value, realizable value. يبقى احنا عندنا هنا لما بنيجي بنسجل على الهيستوريكال كوست، وبنعمل لما بنيجي نسجل assets when we recorded asset historical cost and making the appropriate depreciation. Okay, this is how we should record assets. Okay, but when we should record accounts receivable or trade account receivable realizable value, we have to record it at the available value or the correct value. Okay. طيب the third assertion or the fourth assertion for management assertion is rights and obligation. What is the meaning of rights and obligation? Maybe the asset exist, maybe I recorded these assets. Okay, maybe I recorded these assets at the appropriate amount, but did this asset belong to me? I am the one who owns this assets. يعني ممكن اسجل الاسيتس ويكون موجود والترانزاكشن بتاعته حصلت، ممكن اسجله بالابروبريت اماونت بتاعته وما امسحوش، لكن السؤال هنا هل الاسيتس اللي انا سجلته ده belong to me بتاعي ولا لا؟ يبقى assertion about rights and obligation. This management assertion deal whether assets are the rights of the entity and liabilities are the obligation of the entity at a given date. هل did you recorded your assets and your liabilities or not؟ هل انت سجلت الاسس والliabilities بتاعتك انت ولا لا؟ For example, management asserts that assets are owned by the company or the amounts capitalized for leases in the balance sheet represents the cost of the entity rights to leased property and that the corresponding lease liability represents an obligation of entity. على سبيل المثال ممكن for example المانجمنت in the given date recorded an asset. This is asset of is the asset of the company or not? So rights and obligation meaning that the liabilities and the assets that recorded in the given date is the company's assets and liabilities. يبقى لازم تتأكد ان الاسيتس واللايبيليتيز اللي متسجلة في القوائم الفاينانشال ستيتمنت هي فعلا بتاعة الشركة. Okay. The last management assertion is presentation and disclosure. This assertion deal with whether components of the financial statements are properly combined or separated, described and disclosed. عايز يتأكد بقى، عايز هنا want to be sure that we recorded okay or we prepared the financial statements correctly. We prepared financial statements described and disclosed correctly. For example, management asserts that obligation classified as long-term liability in the balance sheet will not mature within 1 year. Similarly, management asserts that amounts presents as extraordinary items in the income statements are properly classified and described. يبقى هو هنا بيقول ان احنا لما بنيجي نصنف اللونج تيرم liabilities في الفاينانشال ستيتمنت نبقى عارفين ان اللونج تيرم liabilities دي I'm going to pay it until 1 year before 1 year. خلاص، يبقى انا متاكد هنا ان انا فعلا بسجل اللونج تيرم liabilities، معناها ان هي ارقام مش او ديون عليا مش هدفعها غير مش قبل سنه. Okay. This is the 4 categories of management assertion. Existing or occurrence meaning that the asset that recorded is really exist. Occurrence, the transactions that recorded is really happened in the given date or the balance sheet date. Completeness meaning that I'm not omitting any transactions or items of financial statements. Okay. Valuation or allocation, the entities the owner's equity, the equities, expenses, revenues, assets, liabilities are recorded at the proper amount. Rights and obligations, the assets and the liabilities that record the financial statements as really belong to the company. Presentation and disclosure meaning that the financial statements are properly combined or separated, described and disclosed. Okay. دول الخمسة assertions عندي. تمام. طيب تعالوا نشوف بقى المانجمنت او الجنرال ترانزاكشن ريليتد اوديت اوبجكتيفز. الاوبجكتيفز بتاعت كل assertion بتاع كل الاوبجكتيف الاوديت اوبجكتيف ريليتد تو المانجمنت assertion. جنرال ترانزاكشن ريليتد اوديت اوبجكتيف. تمام. The auditor transaction related audit objective follow and are closely related to management assertion. Audit objective related to management assertion. Okay. This is not surprising because auditor's primary responsibility is determine whether management assertions about financial statements are justified. يبقى it's not surprising for me that audit objective is related to management assertion. Why? Audit objective or the main objective for auditor is to be sure that management assertion about financial statement are justified. يبقى احنا مش العلاقه ما بين في علاقه او في ارتباط ما بين الاوديت اوبجكتيف والمانجمنت اسيشن، ما بين اهداف المراجعه ومزاعم الاداره او تاكيدات الاداره. ده طبعا مش غريب لان احنا عارفين ان الفيرست اوبجكتيف او المين اوبجكتيف للاوديتنج انها تتاكد ان فعلا مزاعم الاداره ايه سليمه ودقيقه. اوكي. The transaction related audit objectives are intended to provide framework to help the auditor accumulate sufficient competent evidence required by the third standard of field work and decide the proper evidence to accumulate for class of transactions given the circumstance of the engagement. يبقى الاوديت objective او general transaction related audit objective help the auditor to accumulate and evaluate evidence. Let's remember what we said in lecture 1, that accumulating and evaluation evidence is the backbone of the audit process. So audit objective help the auditor to accumulate evidence. الاوديت اوبجكتيف او اهداف المراجعه بتاعتنا بتساعد الاوديت ان هو يجمع ادله الاثبات ويقيمها بشكل سليم. لو نفتكر المحاضره الاولى كنا قلنا ان الهدف الاساسي او الباك بون بتاع عمليه المراجعه والاوديت بروسيس هو accumulating evidence. تمام؟ فهو هنا الاوديت اوبجكتيف بتساعد الاوديت ان هو accumulating evidence. اوكي؟ Okay, what is kind, or there is 6 transaction related audit objective are discussed. هنناقشها دلوقتي or will be discussed. First of all, existings. This objective deals with whether recorded transaction have actually occurred. Okay, يبقى this objective is related to management assertion of existing or occurrence. يبقى هنا management assertion said existing and occurrence related to this audit objective. Audit objective existing meaning that he want to be sure that amounts included exist. That the amounts included exist. Okay? Completeness. This objective deals with whether all transactions that should be included in the journals have actually been included. يبقى completeness هنا existing amounts in the first one, the first objective are included, and this is the second objective. This exists and complete objective emphasize opposite audit concerns. Okay, this objective completeness is related to management assertion of completeness. Okay, the third one is accuracy. Accuracy, this objective deals with the accuracy of information for accounting transactions. Okay, it's important to distinguish between accuracy and existing or completeness. For example, if a recorded sales transaction shouldn't be recorded because the shipment was not on consignment, the existing objective has been violated. Okay, even if the amount of the invoice was accurately calculated. If the recorded sale was for a valid shipment but the amount were calculated incorrectly, there is a violation of accuracy objective but not of the existence. Okay, يبقى هنا عندي الاكزيستنس عندي هنا او الاكيرسي هنا دي one part of violation and allocation assertion. يبقى الاكيرسي هنا one part of the violation or allocation assertion. Okay, classification mean example misclassification for sales are include cash sales as credit sales, recording a sale of operating fixed as revenues, and misclassifying commercial sale as residential sale. Okay, classification is also a part of the valuation or allocation assertion. The first part is accuracy, second part is classification. Timing error occurs if the transactions are not recorded on the dates of or the transaction took place. A sales transaction, for example, should be recorded on the sale of shipment. Timing is part also from valuation or allocation assertion. يبقى لحد دلوقتي valuation allocation assertion عندي accuracy part of the valuation management assertion, classification and timing. Posting and summarization, this objective deals with the accuracy of the transfer of information from recorded transaction in the journal to subsidiary records and the general ledger. Okay, meaning the transactions are included in the master files and are correctly summarized. This posting and summarization is also part of the valuation or allocation assertion. Okay, so we saw in this part the relation between management assertion and audit objective. The relation between management assertion and audit objective. Let's be clear, existing first audit objective exists, okay, is related to assertion about existence. Second objective, completeness, is related to the management assertion of completeness. Third objective, accuracy, is upon part of the valuation or allocation assertion. Classification is also a part of the valuation or allocation assertion. Timing is also a part of the valuation or allocation assertion. Posting and summarizing is also a part of evaluation or allocation assertion. Okay, so this is the relation between management assertion and audit objective. First, Let's see what is the difference between auditing and accounting. What's the difference between auditing and accounting? Many financial statement users and general public confuse auditing with accounting. The confusion results because most auditing is usually concerned with accounting information, and many auditors have considerable expertise in accounting matters. The confusion is increased by giving the title certified public accountant to many individuals who perform audits. So it's obvious we have a confusion between what is the meaning of accounting, what is the meaning of auditing, and what's the difference between accounting and auditing. So let's try to decrease this confusion. Let's try to clear the difference between accounting and auditing. First, let's define what is the meaning of accounting and what is the meaning of auditing. Accounting is the recording, classifying, and summarizing of economic events in a logical manner for the purpose of providing financial information for decision making. Okay, so in accounting, we recording, we classifying, we summarizing the economic events for the purpose of providing financial information used in decision making. So accounting ending by, or the accounting cycle ending by providing financial information used in decision making, while auditing is starting from what accounting stopped or what accounting ending. So the definition of auditing is determining whether the recorded information properly reflects the economic events that occurred during the accounting period. So the objective of auditing to be sure that the financial information provided by accounting is fairly representing financial position and financial results. Okay, this is the main difference between accounting and auditing. So auditing is starting after accounting, it's ending its cycle. Auditing is to be sure that the accounting information or the financial information provided by accounting is fairly representing the financial position. Also, the main difference between auditor and accountant is the qualifications. An auditor must be qualified, more qualified than accountant. Accounting maybe know generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, but auditor must know generally accepted accounting principles and also must know generally accepted auditing standards. So he must know GAAP and GAS. GAAP related to accounting and GAS related to auditing. Auditor have to know GAAP and GAS. Accounting have to know only GAAP. اوكي، يبقى لو جينا فرقنا او حبينا نفرق ما بين الاوديتنج والاكاونتنج هنلاقي ان في confusion between the difference between auditing and accounting. في confusion واضح جدا عندنا ايه الفرق ما بين الاكاونتنج والاوديتنج. فلو جينا حبينا نعرف الاكاونتنج هنلاقي انها recording, classifying, summarizing account of economic events. ليه بنعمل recording, classifying, summarizing؟ ليه بنعمل الاكاونتنج سايكل؟ عشان في الاخر نديني providing financial information. الفاينانشال انفورميشن اللي بروفايدنج باي اكاونتنج هي بدايه شغل الاوديتنج. الفاينانشال انفورميشن بروفايدنج باي اكاونتنج is the first step for auditing. الاوديتور بياخد الفاينانشال انفورميشن دي ويبدا يعمل عليها auditing process عشان يوصل في الاخر هل الفاينانشال انفورميشن دي correctly fairly representing ولا لا. وده بيكون الديفرنس الاساسي ما بين الاكاونتنج والاوديتنج. عشان كده بنقول auditing starting from what accounting ended. وعشان كده كمان بنقول ان لازم الاوديتور يكون عنده classifications او qualified enough اكتر من الاكاونتنت، لان الاوديتور بيبقى لازم يكون عارف الكرايتيريا، الفاينانشال كرايتيريا زي ما قلناها في المحاضره اللي فاتت، الجاب والاي اف ار اس. كمان بالاضافه ان هو يكون عارف الجاز اللي هي generally accepted auditing standards. لكن الاكاونتنت مطلوب منه بس يكون عارف الجاب والمثلا الاي اف ار اس. الاوديتور كمان لازم يكون عارف اللوز والريجوليشن. ممكن اللوز والريجوليشن دي ما تكونش مطلوبه للاكاونتنج اكتر. يبقى هو ده الفرق الاساسي between auditing and accounting. الاوديتور must be, or to understand accounting, must accumulate and evaluate evidence. And this is the big difference between auditor and accountant. Auditor must have expertise, have experience when accumulating evidence and evaluation of evidence. But accountant don't need to know how the difference between the many types of evidence, or don't need to know how to accumulate or how to evaluate evidence. Okay, so this is the main difference between auditing and accounting. Let's move to the first or the final part of our lecture, generally accepted auditing standards. Now the third part and the final part of our lecture, generally accepted auditing standards, and this is the final part in chapter 1. Generally accepted auditing standards. Auditing standards are general guidelines to aid auditors in fulfilling their professional responsibilities in the audit of historical financial statements. They include considerations of professional qualities such as competence and independence, reporting requirements, and evidence. So standards is the criteria for the auditor how he can do his job, how he can do his task. يبقى ال generally accepted auditing standards هي الكرايتيريا اللي الauditor to have to follow. It's the criteria that the auditor have to follow to achieve its goal, the goal of audit process. And the goal of audit process is to express an opinion whether the financial statements are fairly representing the financial position and the financial results. Okay, the broad guidelines available are the 10 generally accepted auditing standards, and this is we called GAS, which have been seen minimum changes since they were developed by the AICPA in 1947. These standards are not sufficiently specific to provide any meaningful guide to the auditors, but they do represent a framework upon which the AICPA can provide interpretations. Okay, so generally accepted auditing standards is the minimal tasks, is the minimal requirement from the auditor to achieve its goal, to do his task. Okay, we have 10 generally accepted auditing standards, as we said before, fall into 3 categories: general qualifications and conduct, field work, performance of the audit, and reporting results. This figure is summarizing these 10 standards. Okay, general standards meaning adopted training and proficiency, independency in mental attitude, due professional care. Okay, so general qualifications and conduct is personal in nature. It's deal with auditor's training and the proficiency, auditor independency, and the need for due professional care. Okay, معنى ذلك ان general qualifications او general standards caring about the qualifications of the auditor, okay, and due care or due professional care, his independency and his competency. Okay, الفيلد work performance of the audit. Okay, الفيلد work performance audit, and this is the standard of field work: planning, accumulating, and evaluating evidence. The 3 standards of the field work related to planning the audit, okay, obtaining an understanding of the client and its environment, and obtaining a sufficient strategy relating to collecting and evaluating the evidence to be obtained. Okay, by obtaining an understanding of the entity and its environment, including its internal control, the auditors can make assessment of the likelihood of whether the financial statements will be from material errors and fraud. These assessments enable the auditors to evaluate the risks of material misstatements assessment of the material misstatements of the financial statements. To address these risks, the auditor perform procedures to sustain the amounts of financial statements being audited. Okay, example of such evidence include written confirmations from outsider and the first-hand observation of assets by the auditors. The third category of generally accepted auditing standards is standard of reporting. The four standards establish some specific direction for preparation of auditor report. The report must specifically state whether the financial statements are prepared with generally accepted accounting principles. That is, it must contain an opinion on the financial statement as a whole or must disclaim an opinion. The following slides we are going to discuss generally accepted auditing standards in more specific details. First of all, general standards. General standards adopt training and is professional for the auditor, caring about the independence on the auditor and mental attitude, and caring also about due professional care. So general standards is caring about the auditor. Okay, if we focus about these generally accepted auditing standards, we can find out that generally accepted auditing standards is following the auditor process, the auditing process. First of all, I have to have a qualified auditor who is have competency and independency and do his job in due care or due professional care. If I have this qualified auditor, then he have to make a proper planning and supervision. He have to understand the entity and to have to accumulate sufficient appropriate evidence and evaluate this evidence. After he accumulates sufficient appropriate evidence, he has ready to assume his opinion or to express his opinion. So let's move to the second category, standards of reporting. In standards of reporting, meaning that the auditor have to see if the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and what are the consequences when generally accepted accounting principles are not followed. And also we have to express his opinion on the financial statements. Okay, this meaning that these generally accepted auditing standards following the steps of auditing process. Now we finished our first chapter of course auditing 1. Let's remember what we discussed in this chapter. In this chapter, we discussed in chapter through 2 lectures. First lecture, we define the audit and we know what is the types of audit and the objective of audits. Okay, through our second chapter, we discussed management assertion and transaction related audit objective. We found the difference between auditing and accounting. We discussed generally accepted auditing standards. Now our lecture is finished. Thank you.